So we know we're doing a couple different type property sales. One is first, let me start. I did make books for y'all, and I do plan on providing more information. So this is a binder where as I come with more information, that you will have a place to keep all the information. Today, I have the zoning ordinance from 2011. I have 20810, 20811, and I also have the development intake form, along with a list of the properties that the city owns per request of Councilwoman Robinson. And the one page that got highlighted line items is public property that the city owns, just to kind of decipher between public property and the private property that's under city control. So we did a scrub, and the one sheet is the public property that the city owns. And it's categorized under two different categories. One is properties that need to go to the vote of the people, and properties that need a supermajority, 41 vote. And that is deciphered through the charter. According to the ordinance and the charter, public properties that goes for sale needs a 41 vote, unless it is parks, DPW yard, the library. They're all listed in the charter. So I just wanted to kind of give that visual so you will have it for your records, along with the properties that the city owns. So if we look at 20810, which is structures. We know most everything is going to, all of the residential structures are going to auction per the charter of 2019. All the other structures are commercial structures, which would require a development agreement and a purchase agreement. Before that, when someone interested in purchasing property comes to the real estate window to apply for the property, they're required to fill out the application and have a development plan, which is different than the site plan. So the development plan is it's also in your folders, the development intake form that's required to put in for purchase. As far as lots, we know we got the side lot program, which is for adjacent properties to the ownership of a property. So if you own a property, you can put in for a side lot for only the adjacent lot, either to the right or the left of the property. Anything?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
The person who owns that, do you need to reside in that property or just be the owner of it?
Per the ordinance and per the charter, just own it.
Okay.
Now, if I may,
Legal, yes.
the application indicates that the person living there, so we're gonna have to make sure that all of the forms, and we discussed that earlier, that all of the forms are uniform.
Correct.
As far as what the requirements are, but you know, that does need to be cleared up.
Yeah, that question came up a few times and the answer was fairly ambiguous. And so to make it easier on us, none of us have done this before.
Right.
So I want to make sure that when that question is asked, does it have to be the person who lives in the house, or could it be any person? It came up last year. It was a battle over the person that was physically there versus the person who owned the property. So if we can make it a little bit clearer for the potential applicants as well as the people in the community, so that they know. And on the tail end of that, there's a person who lives there versus the person who owns the property adjacent. Do they get the first right of refusal?
That's unclear as well, but I do know that they legal.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
So
your laptop is blocking your microphone.
I'm sorry. So my question related to, and this is a concern that local residents may have addressed in the past. You live next to a house and then you have someone, you live next to a house for 15 or 20 years and you've cared for that property, and someone who owns a property adjacent to you on the opposite side purchases it in an auction. They purchase it privately. When it comes time to decide who gets that lot, does the local person get the first right of refusal? Is there a process where they have to check with the person next door to see if they would have liked to purchase it as well? You know, are there any stopgaps to look out for residents?
Well, it was a policy. I don't necessarily know that it was written and etched in stone in terms of a
Okay.
requirement, but a policy that the previous CED director was under was for the person who was interested in purchasing the property to check with the other person. But remember, whoever submits an application to purchase that lot, yes, it's helpful if you check with the other party to see whether or not they want it, but they were the ones to put the application
Okay,
in.
so it sounds like first
So-
come, first serve is the,
It sounds like that, certainly they could check, but if they put the application in to purchase that lot, we had a previous conflict, on some property on Richton that we went through back and forth about who was going to get it. And so, if you put the application in, it just depends. If the other person is interested in it, if it's right next to them, then it depends on whether or not the lot is right next to you or it's adjacent to you. So
would it
as a
benefit?
courtesy, you probably should check with the other
Yeah,
party.
I'm wondering, should we put language in for us should we put language in there that suggests it's a first come, first serve scenario? How do we create language so that it doesn't create the ambiguity with someone who is upset or disgruntled because they didn't think of it first, took action? Is there some type of language that we can put in there that this occurs on a first come, first serve basis?
We can take a look at that, because I have spoken with the engineer and water department about doing the applications. So everybody's on the same page as far as the administration on policy and procedures according to the ordinance and the charter. So that's something that we'll take a look at, kind of going with lessons learned, with do we do the due diligence of contacting the neighbors if they want to be a lot split, or do we do first come, first serve? Because it's not spelled out anywhere that I've seen.
Right.
But when we get together and brainstorm, it's something that, we'll take a bigger look at.
Okay. And then just the last thing I want to say to close it out on that is, I think because there is so much outside pressure on there's outside pressure on our local real estate, that should we do something like that, it might be worth letting the local residents know, because it's happening now. 5 years or 10 years from it'll still be the same, but that there's been a change, and that people who have considered for a long time purchasing that side lot, they might be inspired to do so, if that makes sense to you. Because once there's more interest in the city and more property is being sold, the likelihood of a local resident having the same type of capital as someone outside of Highland Park is highly unlikely, just on a per capita basis. Most people outside of the city are wealthier than people who live here. So, and I asked that question to make sure that as we go through this, we do give the people who've lived here and endured an opportunity to maybe reclaim or claim that lot next door to them that they've been taking care of for years.
Council President,
Yes,
if I
ma'am.
may, are you referring to the lots or structures? Because you have to own the property, in terms of purchasing the lot next to you. So it doesn't matter if they're outside or inside, you just have to own the property.
You're absolutely correct, but maybe I'm just a bleeding heart for local people, because this might be the only opportunity that they have to purchase, to increase the size of their home lot.
Right.
And buying a side lot might be attractive to them if they think, we might as well do this now. We've been taking care of it for a period of time.
Yeah, I would just be careful on the legalities of it. So
That's why I have the
that's
questions.
something I would run by Attorney George Contis in the real estate department. The real estate legal team, to see if legally we can hold property, or what all we can do, or what can be defended, if you will.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And as far as the other vacant lots, in order to purchase back the other vacant lots, you need, again, a development plan, and it's a different application, a different process. So all of that is property sale. When you get into site plan, that's something a lot different. It's after someone has site control, or private owners, when they want to develop their properties, that's when we put them through the process with the flow chart. So like one doesn't have anything to do with the other, at that time. Yes, you need ownership of the property, you need some type of site control to begin the due diligence. But I just want to be clear that the ownership, what's required to purchase city property is the development intake form, which is also in your packet.
Okay.
And really, I'm before the body to, take questions as well, because we got a lot of good, exciting things coming your way. And my plan is to, we have a stack of developments, I want to take it by engineering, building, so we can get our, take a look at it and do our initial vetting. And I plan on, if you keep doing the workshops, bringing them to the workshop before we go into these other processes, because everyone, in my opinion, needs to know what's going on instead of me coming to you at the tail end saying, this is that, because we'll have it vetted and we'll know the direction that we would like to go.
So I think that maybe you and Chairman Motley should, this is my suggestion too, to get it recorded. Chairman Motley might if you'd be kind enough to do a Zoom call, just run it through your process, and then he can explain to people as it relates to planning commission. The planning commission is bound by the zoning ordinance and the city ordinances for site plan approval. In many cases, it's binary. Does the site plan fit with the master plan?
Right.
And so these are people who already own their property, and then they go to planning commission. And as a former planning commissioner, we were always told, and Paul was the one that told us, we have a binary response. If it meets, that in many cases, planning commission will either send it back for more information, but they approve it based on whether or not it fulfills that criteria. And I only know that from sitting in the room as a planning commissioner. I think the public might gain from that knowledge as well, having Paul and yourself possibly explain that to them, what the role of the planning commission is and how they do their work. Because I can't think of one instance as a planning commissioner that we did not give somebody who owned private property site plan approval if the site plan met with the guidelines of our ordinances and of the zoning board, the zoning manual.
Right. What I would like to do actually is have that discussion about the planning commission and about TIFA. So I want to be more informative and transparent on how we moving with these commissions, so everyone knows the roles and what they're in place for. So as we move through these developments and rebuild the city, people understand, okay, this is this, and the plan to be outlined. When we get the site plan in, it's going to go through the departments. They're going to get a chance to get their feedback, their input. We give it back to the developer. They do what they need to do. And then, it follows the flow before it comes to council for final site plan approval. Some may request a preliminary site plan approval where it's just, hey, this is what we're looking to do to get more feedback and more input. So when it is time for final site plan approval, all of the considerations will be put into the plan. So a lot of adjustments won't have to be made moving forward.
Yeah, you can't get a capital stack without, you got to get site control if you don't own it. Or
absolutely.
And then if you do own it, you have to get site plan approval from Detroit's planning commission. And then it goes again in front of city council, and it's a rubber stamp in many cases, because their planning commission is 9 people. 9 people with the staff they all have, so they got plenty of people working on it. It is more so a matter of just like Mr. Curris when he came here, they had their idea for their gas station, and next.
So it's on the agenda today.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example, because he came with his development plan, which is separate.
Right.
And then site plan, he already owns a property, so getting site plan approval is just a matter of, does this meet the criteria of the ordinance?
I look at that as a preliminary, because it didn't go through the departments to get the feedback.
Okay.
So now they got the full feedback. And then remember, after final site plan approval, you still have construction approval and all these other steps before they can start pulling permits.
Right.
So it's not just they leave here, they start construction. They still got more due diligence after the final site plan approval before they can start to develop.
Ms. Manick, I saw your hand.
I just wanted you to go back, if you could, over City of Highland Park property sale process. So what's the process?
For structures or lots, commercial or all?
Let's just do the lots. Let's go back to the vacant lots.
Vacant lot. So as a side lot, That's a more simple process. If you own a property, you can purchase the side lot. You know, the application, no development plan, you know, you can write it on there. If you just want to purchase a lot, you have to put in the developer intake form, and there's a little bit more information that the city needs from you.
So just to be clear, I want the side lot next to me. I can come in, come to the third window, which is the real estate window,
Correct.
get an application, which the cost is $25.
$25.
$25.
Yeah.
And then I also have to present back an application with a development plan. Or no development.
Not for the side lot.
Not for the side lot.
Correct.
So
Adjacent side lot.
adjacent side lot. Okay, so my neighbor down the street who's on the other side
Mhm,
of that adjacent side lot
mhm,
comes in 2 days later
mhm,
and do the same thing.
mhm.
So at that point is when we can decide or talk. Before, earlier last year, we suggested that they talk to one another
Mhm.
to decide, could they be all right with splitting it?
That's an option.
And if they split it, then an assessor has to come in from Wayne County, am I correct? Because
Yeah.
now you changing that parcel into two parcels, and it has to be identified. So at some point, Wayne County has to come into that picture.
Legal seems to agree.
Yeah, we just had a situation like that with the water department. You want to, can we ask him to comment briefly on what we did, what George Contis recommended that we do on that instance?
If you do a split, take four combinations, the same thing, just in reverse. You have one big parcel, you want to cut it into a small one. You go out, you need to survey what you want to split, you write a legal description, you send that legal description to the county and into Frank, so that a new tax ID can be established, and new ownership can be assigned to that parcel. Same thing, if you have two parcels, you want to combine them, you need to do a survey and do a legal description of what the new parent parcel would be after that combination or after that split. So in Highland Park, we have several parcels that from old plats from 1900s where they have the same tax ID. We're just going through this on Victor, where you have two properties with the same tax ID and one property that doesn't have an address. So that's a problem from a buyer standpoint, from all kinds of standpoints. So the easy resolution was to go back and pull the old plat from the Henry Ford days, which has a lot of the old plats in the city are just lots. This is blocks, lot 1 through 15 of the whatever plat. In that case, if you're talking about two lots, all you need to do is say lot 101, lot 102, right? And you need to send that into the assessor to have that property redefined as lots 101 and 102 and defined. So it's gonna be a lot of that moving forward in the future, because the city's got a lot of old business that needs to be addressed. Just things
Right.
just and like Carl was talking about, part of what we said to him, the CD is the intake. So everything comes in CD, and CD distributes that to where all the places where we were falling down. Some of the distribution wasn't consistent. So we would either get brought in at the last minute with planning commission through something, you haven't seen anything. CD gets it, goes to departments, gets comments from the departments, and then he decides on how it's going to go to the planning commission and move forward. So I think what he's trying to do now is establish the right cadence and the right process. It always comes in, it always goes out, comments always come back in, and then he can give those to the planning commission. They can deliberate when they want to make a decision on how to bring it to the council. Stuff gets to the council, it shouldn't be here because we missed some steps. So I know that's hard to combine, split all of that, but I'm just saying, he and I have been talking in our staff about how we can help the process, and that ties into water, because we need development, we need tax base, right? We don't have money, we need new development. That's something we need to work with. So all of that ties together.
So now, who pays for that?
Who pays? The developer,
survey?
the developer should be paying.
So that
If
includes,
it's private owned property, if it's the city owned property, the owner of the property is paying.
Right.
Whether it's the developer or the city.
okay, so that means it would be me, the resident, who wants to buy this, me, the resident, or any other resident, we would have to pay for the survey.
Yeah, that would be your
I just wanted to-
expense to get that lot, and find that lot to your current lot, you submit that information to the city, to us, to review, review the survey, make sure it's good. Deal with CD, deal with building department, and assessment. That's how that.
Thank you.
Good.
Back on with that. So, it's there, it's actually in here, but I don't know if we addressed that last time when we asked them, well, they didn't split the property, so
Right.
we didn't even go there. But it's in here, but it doesn't say who pays.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, again, some of what has already been mentioned, and that we may need to go back. So I'm gonna wait to the end and say what I wanna say, the rest of that.
Okay.
Because I just want to hear the rest. And then he kind of nailed it, but we also talked about if I see a lot and I'm not the resident next to it, I have to have a development plan. I also, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was like, yeah,
It has to be, again, assessed. Because if it's a certain size, then it becomes buildable.
mm-hmm.
So do we have
When,
assessors or proper, who would you
when you
assess?
assess the value,
Has to assess the value and measure it.
so we assess the value.
Now, who measures it?
This, on the summary, there is the values on the
So we're
summary.
just gonna go by that.
Yeah, by the summary, by the real estate summary. That's what
we're
we've
gonna
been,
go
that's what, most of them were 35 by 100. So most lots are, and it's on that real estate summary.
by. Okay, because a lot of our lots that are in certain areas are all buildable size. They're not
Mhm.
just, you can go get,
I agree.
most of them are buildable size, which most people don't know,
Mhm.
that their house, or maybe their house not there anymore,
Right,
but it's on a buildable. So I just wanted to kind of clarify it or put that out there, that we remind people that when they want to buy a lot, if it's a buildable size, then you need to build on it.
that's right, because we're interested and we're looking for developers to build on lots.
We'll go there later.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the discussion,
Okay,
that's,
well, if that's the case, so I think that there's some development out there that will do a group or a whole area, and then also will do infield, which is
Yeah.
what we're kind of talking about here.
Mhm.
They are willing to do infield as long as they know that they have also another area that they're gonna develop.
correct.
Now, I'm gonna be honest, most, I guess we call them contractors, don't wanna have infield here, and then you send them 2 miles over to another infield. So it would be infield and maybe the first 5 lots, or going either way,
Mhm.
is more inviting
Mhm.
to those development people. So I'm hoping that we are looking, and it sounds like we are,
Yep.
looking at those people that wanna develop and willing to also do the infield.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why, that's really the major reason why I want to have this conversation. So as we move forward, we can just be on the one accord on the process and how we're going to move this forward. Because when we get started, we want to make sure, like Damon said, we need people to come in and to develop, so we can get them on tax roll and they can start paying water bills, and we don't have to pay the stormwater charges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's interest in both. Right now, it's a huge interest, but we really need to be on one accord when it comes to this development and how we're going to move forward based off of what we have. So we have these ordinances, we have the charter, so let's take a look at it and understand it together. So when we come into council, we can, you're doing your due diligence on the legislative side, and we're doing ours on the administrative side. So this is, open discussion. We want to make sure we're transparent and we're working together to create wealth and create development and all these things for the city of Highland Park.
I just want to stay on task. That's all. That's why I said some
Sounds
of that
good.
might not be part of our task today. But
No,
go ahead.
No, this is a discussion on
Yeah.
development on getting on task. So any questions? This is a great time.
I agree, but if you could also do something, this is something that I think will really help the citizens. I drive around the city. And so probably the best example of infill development that I can see in the city is the Grand area where I don't know what year it was, in the 70s or the 80s, where you see a lot of homes that are of a different age than the house in the neighborhood right next door to them. Once you get south of the freeway, the homes in that area are of a certain age, certain period. And then when you go north of the Davidson Freeway in that small subdivision, you see a lot of homes that were either built in the late 60s or late 70s. I think it would be useful to let council know, just let the public know generally what it costs to do infill housing, because it would, I don't want to say curb the enthusiasm, but it will bring some balance. If a developer comes and says, for every infill house I do in Highland Park, it's going to cost me $130,000 to build, but because of 80% AMI, that's adjusted median income, I'm only going to be able to sell them for $75,000. And so how they either have to get low income housing tax credits to get that thing built. Where do they eat that part that's in the middle? Because if we know developers are going to come here and spend $60,000 more to build a house than they can actually sell it for, there might be some developers willing to do that, but we should have a conversation with them so that they can give us a clear picture of what it looks like to raise that capital to build a house for 125 and only be able to sell it for 75. And that's reality.
That's reality, but that's one reality. The other reality is there are people that can come and pay the other prices
Exactly.
also.
Exactly.
So I mean, we got to kind of get in the mindset of, developing for maybe an upper middle class or somebody that might want to pay, that amount. If you look what's going on up and down Woodward and around,
they're expanding their tax base by bringing in higher net worth individuals. Because the median income here is $20,000, and you want to get the tax base up, you're gonna need to bring some people in here that make
that's
100 grand.
without question.
Yeah, and
without question.
So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
And so I'll get the cost per square foot. I can't remember what it is right now, but I'll double back with that. The cost per square foot, we kind of get a range of what it'll cost.
Okay, I know rent per square foot for Highland Park is $1.50, $1.75. Highland Park, that would put a studio apartment around $6 change. I don't know what the apartments are going for.
I'm talking as far as building.
Okay. That means comparison. I'm comparing the rent rate versus the mortgage rate. Okay. Go ahead, man.
I think that depends on, again, where you are. So I know that some houses just sold pretty much for more than we probably would have thought they would have. So when we're talking about development, I agree that sometimes we do need, or they may need some incentives, but right now, I think that Highland Park has given a whole bunch of incentives and got nothing for it. So I'm with you on saying that there are some developers out there that are just gonna come because they're gonna get, if they build something here for $100,000, I guarantee you, they're not gonna sell it for 75. And they're gonna get over 100.
And we don't want them to.
But looking at some of the, I guess I want to make mention, Carlton, that I did to Mr. Hinton, is that we make sure that when they come to that window, they know a lot of the information that they need to know before it reverts back to us. Because I think this council is gonna ask for things to be reverted back if it's not taken care of. So in many cases, they need to be able to, I mean, we can't determine that they're gonna do it, but they're supposed to have a fence built. Okay, they got a lot of things they need to take care of. They gotta continue to take care of the property. And something I know this council looks at is if you didn't take care of the property that you own right now, then I don't understand why we should give you any other property.
Yeah, I just want to address Council President's some of the points he made. So when we get into the development game, we really got to focus on those development agreements, right? And I'm talking from an infrastructure standpoint. So something that Councilman Manica was talking about, you talk about infill. If you're on a block and you're going to occupy maybe 50 or 60% with the infill plus what's there, now we get into maybe it's an obligation of you to overlay that street, okay? Because the city still has infrastructure that needs to be upgraded. So what happens in a lot of other communities, they get these costs vetted out in the development agreement. It says I'm going to replace water main, I'm going to replace sewer, I'm going to
I'm gonna do that, there's some benefit for both parties. Instead of just infilling 7 houses on a block, the street still needs to be paved, the water main still needs to be done. So what I talked to Carlton about is getting us involved in the beginning. If we really want to get a little bit more sophisticated with our development agreements, then we got to be at the table and say, and then what happens is then they'll be able to determine how many lots they need to do to disperse those costs. They look at the market, they look at how much infrastructure, and that all comes into that price. So there's a lot that goes into this thing. And I just want to see, as we enter into this new era, that the city is not always strapped with paying these costs like we have been over the last 10 years. I mean, we got to pay, you hear about the rates going up, the water and all this. Well, we have to be saying at the table in the beginning, this is what we need the developer to do. And that kind of vets out who you're talking to and what they're able to bring. That's not for every developer, but for, you need to be having that conversation so that we can get all that information on the table up front and get the benefit of it, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do some development, we're going to get a few houses built, but then how are we going to pay these roads, right? Correct. And not deferring all those costs, but where there's a fair share between, the city. If the developer's willing to pay 60 and the city can front 40, we're not fronting 100. That's progress.
It enhances the value of what they build anyway. You need a new paved street that enhances the value. Who want to move in a new house on a road with giant potholes in it?
Yeah, that lot appeal, that street appeal, right? Yeah. Brand new, 1.5 inch smooth asphalt makes that look a lot better, right? Than new house with deteriorating roads.
Yeah.
So that's part of site plan?
No, that's on the development agreement part. And that's even before. So once somebody comes in and says they want to play ball with the city and say, I want to buy these lots, and they come to CD and they start talking about development agreement, that's when you start having these conversations about, okay, if you want to move on to this block, this is, look at our capital improvements plan, look at things that need to be done. Are you willing to contribute to that? Let them go back, run the numbers on performance, says, oh, that might increase what I need to do on each house by $5,000 or $6,000. I need to get 20 houses instead of 10. If you can give me 20, then I can do that. I can get this road paved, or I can get this water main in place. So that's before the site plan. After we get into that, it's too late, because now they're like, I've already taken out my financing. I'm already strapped. I can't really do that now. And that's kind of where we ended up. We got to be on the front end to let them know where they're going and let them run their numbers and do that kind of thing. We did it successfully, I would say, with the Means Group to a certain extent, right? I mean, that's the last thing that I can say that the city was involved in, where it took many years to get there. But I think at the end, when we vacated lots and all of that, and we had those conversations about sewer under the building and this, that, and the other, all of that was happening over a period of time before they got to where they got. So it can be done. The city has done it. We just got to be deliberate and organized about what we're doing in the front end and have those. And it might be tough. I mean, we want development, but we don't want everything, any and everything, right? We want what we want. We want what aligns with the master plan. We want what's going to take the burden off of us from an infrastructure standpoint. So we need what we want and not what they want. It's like we come as a team. City has assets. You have capital. Great. Let's do a deal. Let's make this happen. But not like city give you everything and then we get nothing. Right, we don't. That's not what we want to do.
Right.
Because they'll do it, and we don't have to have the world. Right. But what we need something that's fair and equitable for everybody involved. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We still have some time here.
How many? I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying we still have some time here, so please take all the time you need. So
there's a site plan. Is there steps in that site plan? Is it more than one site plan? Because I know it's a final, and so.
So when the developer come in, they can request a preliminary, and that'll help them understand before they get deep into it. But then there's a final site plan, and it's all outlined in the zoning ordinance, like how to go about it. How to apply the different, and it's summarized on the little flow chart.
Yeah.
So is this the part? I guess is this the step where engineering comes in or take part in that?
Yeah, as soon as it's right away.
Yeah, let me call it out to him too, because I just pulled it up on mine.
Right away.
It is number 1214.06. It's called site plan review.
It's in the ordinance that we will provide in this book, so 12-14-06.
You have-
So it's on
I think I might have
page
another.
17.
Oh, go ahead here.
It's on page 17.
You see it?
And then I will send an electronic copy of the zoning ordinance to all members of council right now, so that you'll have it.
Anything else you just want to tell us, or you?
No, I was just, like I said, so, you know, I kind of
I
presented,
didn't know
I
if you were
I
done with
wanted
your
to just questions or
presentation.
not. No, this is a discussion. I didn't really. So if, you know, this is, and this will be kind of an ongoing discussion. This is just the first of probably many. And like I say, with the binder, you know, it'll be more information coming, so you have one place for CED information.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So, Director Clyburn, one of the things I think is important that we do is to make sure that when individuals come into the real estate division, that they have more information. Right now, they're just basically given the application. And while we might not be able to provide a packet or a binder, we certainly can refer individuals to our website as we make all the forms more uniform. You know, so that they'll know what's expected. You need a fence, you need to do this, you need to do that. Here's the site plan information, here are the ordinances and stuff, because, you know, most of the more recent ordinances are online, the other ordinances are on Municode, but some of those are, you know, somewhat
They're
outdated. We
outdated.
got to get that together, but the property ordinances, those are
Right.
on the website, and so people have to read those and know what's expected. So,
Okay.
but I think we need to maybe have a list in addition to the application, so
Okay.
that individuals will know what to follow, or a step-by-step process, so it'll make it more easier for our residents and developers to
Okay.
get property and know what's expected in the
So
process.
when we work on condensing and redoing the applications, that's something that myself and the engineering department will kind of flesh out,
Okay.
you know, because they put together the flow chart and those
It was
things.
good.
So we can have those things for the potential developers and residents.
Okay.
So again, what did you say? And I apologize, this first chart is for?
It's just information,
Just
which
information.
each department is responsible for.
Okay, and so I noticed that legal's not here. Is legal, how does legal, what part?
We're not in it.
How does legal
We're
fit
not
into
in.
it?
How do they fit in?
Yeah, so does legal have to make sure?
So it's more departments that's included with development. These are just handouts
Okay, I
that
just
were
wanted to make
around.
sure.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why I
Yeah,
put it
no,
away
it's-
after you
Yeah,
answered.
no, it's other departments involved. So those are just some of the departments and what the duties are. And it kind of helps us as a staff stay, you know, in our lanes, or know who does what as we're moving things forward in the process.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what that chart was for.
Mhm.
My question is now on, I lost it, right? I think it's when it reverts back. What would make a lot revert back to the city?
If they don't follow what's in with it, like you say, with the fence and those things, but side lots, you know,
I know we're
that's,
gonna be leaning
yeah,
on
it's-
that, yeah.
so reversion to me is if, so we have some option of purchases out here, right?
Mhm.
And they got 6 months to do their due diligence. And if they don't do their due diligence and they're not asking for extension, or if we don't see them actively working, then after that 6 months, we can reclaim the property.
So 6 months is kind of our timeline.
That's just for the options to purchase.
for the options.
And the purchase agreements is different and they're outlined, so it depends on the contract.
Okay, and what their development plan was. correct? Or
That-
is?
That's all. So the purchase agreement and development plan kind of go hand in hand.
Director Claiborne, I want to ask that offline you send us some more topics that will be relevant to some of the things that we have to do in the coming months. As you said, there are a number of different developers or developments that you want to bring in front of us to have conversation. And I think just based on our past experience, it would be a good idea to get out ahead of whatever the hot buttons are on those issues. I would also think it would be a good idea to bring in someone, a neutral third party, someone with development experience to talk to us as legislators about their position. Because in many cases, some developers might be, they might have some issues that they want to share with us so that we can better understand what they're actually doing when it comes to making an investment in a community. We have real estate and we want their energy, but I want to make sure that we've had a lot of unanswered questions in the past. That tends to be exceptionally frustrating for members to have something in front of them to vote on and still have more questions than answers related to that. So I think it would be useful if you could provide us with additional educational material or again, a neutral third party who will be able to offer us some insight into the work that they actually do as it relates to development, single family homes or whatever it is I think that you think will be useful to giving us a clearer picture of how the developer wants to interface with the community. If I'm not mistaken, it's been over 20 years since we've really been through this process. So even if everybody in town was exceptionally familiar, we don't have a case to look at in the past 20 years. So the more that you can share with us, the better. I think it'll make us better informed to make decisions related to real estate development. I do thank you for that. Before I close it out here, does anybody else have any additional questions for Director Claiborne?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am. Would you please?
So, Council President, one of the things I thought worked effectively with the last council was that when individuals had a plan or wanted to purchase real estate, they would come and present their plan at a workshop. And it afforded council an opportunity to ask more questions. It afforded the developers an opportunity than just 5 minutes at a regular meeting to, give it all they got in terms of adopt my plan. So if we could do that, whether we had two developers at a time at a workshop, and then you had a workshop 1 week, and then the next week you can vote on it, and maybe they can answer questions in between that time. But at the regular meetings, it doesn't afford individuals enough time to really, put their plan forth where you can understand it and have a chance to ask questions without us being here till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I think the workshops, if we can add that to the workshops, it would be helpful for everybody. I think it worked the last time.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned earlier, even before it's time to vote. Like I say, like when the city vets it and we know that we want to move forward with this developer before we get into something, I want to come to council workshop so we get input and it's on your radar. It may be months down the line before we come back, but at least you know what's going into the queue and what's going on when it comes to development from the administrative side.
That's perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly reasonable. All right, sir. Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
I don't know if this is possible, Mr. Claiborne, but we talked about making a uniform, making the application and different things all uniform. If we could work on that as a workshop or work group or something, work on that before we continue to bring them, unless it's something emergency wise.
Right.
Because that could probably happen in a week that we work on something. And then we won't have this issue maybe.
I agree. Like I said, I've been talking to MCA quite a bit because they do great jobs with applications and forms, and I want to go over there and talk to them, and so we can put some things together. Then we come to council for a workshop because it still is going to be based off of ordinances and the charter. So we're not changing anything. We're just making it uniform.
And if there's any issue in the ordinance compared to what you're trying to do, and
I definitely will.
coming up with, we in a new society that, you mentioned it to us, so we can look at the ordinance and see how we can all be on one of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for your time.
So we'll move into good and welfare. Mr. Ostraki joined us. Did you have him on record joining us? Good and welfare.
the record show that I'm not here all the way to the council. meeting.
All right, all right. Good and welfare. Ms. Martin, you have anything for good and welfare?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Understand.
He's not checked in for this. He's
I checked in for the workshop. Yeah, I came in here late. I missed everything. I'm not here.
Okay. Ms. Martin, do you have anything for good and welfare? Okay. Ms. Manica, do you have anything for good and welfare?
No,
Okay. Council Pro Tem, do you have anything for good and welfare?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have something for good and welfare. And thank you, everybody, for your patience during this process. I came across something online that it was troubling to see it, but I just want to share it with you because I think, I'm sorry, just give me just a second. Has anybody in this building been to Ohana Garden? The answer, of course, is yes. You've been to Ohana Garden, and I saw this online. It was very frustrating to watch, but this is from several years ago. See if I can get the volume to work.
Well, it's
It's not working.
So I'll do
I'll
this.
do this.
He muted.
This is Ms. Hoy. This is 13 years ago. And in this video, what I'll be happy to share, that is Ms. Hoy getting angry because she's trying to get a side lot. So I have a feed that anything Highland Park, it comes out in my feed, and I'm watching Ms. Hoy. You can see her energy. Her item had been tabled and tabled and tabled and tabled and tabled again. I didn't get her permission to show this, but I found this online. And I was struck by the fact that this was 13 years ago. And here is a citizen who, if you have not been to Ohana Garden, it is beautiful. It's absolutely breathtaking. I've been to 5 or 6 events there. She's done everything from food tastings to hosting a speaker from out of town. It's fantastic what she's done there. I've also been across the street to Avalon Village. And what I found in most of these old videos is that you had a lot of frustrated people in the city who were trying to get access to property. And the consistent thing is that it was a local person who was really trying hard to get this property to make some improvements. It's really frustrating to know that 11 years later, that this type of situation is still happening. And so I'm glad that we had this meeting today. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to discuss this with Director Clyburn. There's still so much that we need to learn. I learned something sitting here today. I thought I knew some stuff, and I found out some things here today that were informative to me, and it better make me better prepared to make a legislative decision. So what I'd like to do is the workshop is a classroom. This is an opportunity for us to learn. And if we have workshops like the one that we had today, we'll be having more of those. And I want to thank all the participants who joined us here today. This is really the only way that the city is going to move forward, is if we empower ourselves with knowledge. So I thank you all for your time, and I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.